Hey everybody, this is Deji.
And Chris.
Welcome to the Lot 1 podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Corey Martin about composing, music publishing, commercials, and a lot more. So, let's get into it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
So, I want to kind of just start off at the beginning.
All right.
How did you get into this crazy business we found ourselves in now?
All right. So let's see. Grew up in a super musical family. So it was kind of always, there was sort of always some sort of path in music that I had to go after. I didn't, if I'm honest, like I ended up going to music school. So high school, I went to college for music and didn't really have a great plan of any, there was no path. I just was like, hey, I want to do music, so I'll go study music, and no concept of what that would look like. And then in my college, they were obsessed with this idea of community. So they really, even though I was going to college and my best friend from my hometown was also going to that same college, they didn't want anybody to live together that knew each other. And so everybody was random housing situations. So it was like a 12 by 12 room with 3 grown men in it, basically, that were complete strangers, which was great. But it ended up being fine. And it was out here, like near the greater LA area. And one of the kids that I was randomly assigned is still a friend of mine. His name's Christian, and he was a filmmaker. And very quickly he was like, oh, you do music, so you're going to score my films, right? And I was like, I don't know what that means, but yeah, because I don't have any better ideas whatsoever.
Nice.
So I started kind of aiming all of my studies. That's all it took, apparently.
That's funny.
And I started sort of aiming all of my studies towards film composition and got really into John Williams and Hans Zimmer, people I grew up idolizing without realizing it. You know how that kind of happens? It's like, oh yeah, I remember that when I was a kid, I would just like obsess over the Howard Shore scoring sessions from Lord of the Rings on like the DVD extra, but it didn't occur to me that that was a thing I could do. Partially because I grew up like playing in bands. So the idea of an orchestra was so foreign to me and it was so above my level. But luckily, going to school for music will teach you what like an oboe is and how to write for orchestra. So, and then during that same year, a kid down the hall, another random kid down the hall named Rob, I think he walked in. I was like working on something that just sounded like, bad MIDI demo of Pirates of the Caribbean. And he goes, oh, well, my dad is working on the new Pirates of the Caribbean. He's a composer. And I was like, what? And then so within like a few days, I had convinced him to drive me down to Santa Monica, and he was working out of Hansa's studio. He's one of the composers on, I think, Pirates either 3 or 4 at the time. And so very quickly I was like, oh, I am now like kind of seeing what the big leagues of this whole thing looks like, and just got like so interested and so obsessed with it. And then I ended up getting an internship with that composer and his partner. And then that turned into a job. So that was my way in, was a random kid being like, oh, you're writing bad Pirates music. My dad writes good Pirates music.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
So it truly is who you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's who randomly walks into your dorm room, apparently.
Yeah. So after you were coerced into...
That's right.
Getting into someone, writing for someone's short, you were then... the joke is not coming. Sorry. This is a bad joke, and it's going to stay in. It's okay.
I was following you all the way to the end.
I know, and I apologize profusely for that.
Reached the end, and there was a wall.
Yeah, there was a wall. Even for me, I didn't even know it was really going to be a wall there. So you mentioned John Williams and Hans Zimmer as some of your inspirations. Is that so? After you started going to school, did that expand a little bit more?
Yeah.
Did you sort of really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I got obsessed with Carl Stalling for a long time. He wrote like a lot of. He was one of the main composers for Looney Tunes throughout the decades, and I would like there used to be these old crude recordings of his recording sessions, and they were like so gnarly, but it was just like, it was magic because they were working with streamers and cartoons. Like there was no click track or anything like that. And the music is so unbelievably complicated, and so like the timing is so precise with animation, especially that type of animation. So got really into that, got very into obviously like Alexander Desplat. He's probably still one of my biggest influences. You can hear him a lot in my music. And yeah, just I've lots of heroes that I just sort of gained over the years. Oliver Arnold's, lots of people. Then nowadays it's like, these are people that I have to refer to as my peers, which scares the living hell out of me because it doesn't feel true, but technically it is.
Yeah.
And now it's like, yeah, it's funny now that I'm in my 30s. I've been doing it for a while, and like I have friends winning Emmys, and that's crazy, you know? So yeah, they're my heroes too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not me. No Emmys here.
Not yet.
I appreciate it.
So what's sort of the process for composing just either a spot? Because I know you started. Actually, no. Before we get into that, actually, let's go back to when you first started and you got that job, right?
Yep.
What was the job that you got?
Yeah, so it started as the internship. So I was driving from this little city like 12 miles east of Pasadena. So I was driving from there to West Hollywood every day for an unpaid internship, which was so gnarly because traffic patterns here, it was like
terrible,
2 hours each way, sort of beat.
Wow. Yeah.
But I just stuck with it, and the job was like the most boring, mind-numbing stuff you could do. Was finding the keys and the tempos and writing like descriptive paragraphs for what a cue sounds like. Or they were doing a lot of trailers at the time, so my job would be, oh, they used our kick drum sample in the Lone Ranger trailer. Go find it. You know what I mean? So I did a lot of that. And then so when that turned into orchestrating. So I became a very easy solution for them to be like, oh, we're going to orchestra for this project, and we don't want to like go and get a full-on orchestrator if all we're actually doing is we just need you to make sheet music of our exact MIDI. We don't need you to like expand upon it or like make any embellishments or flowery, like just literally take from our computers and put it on a stand. I was like, I could absolutely do that. So when I was like 19, I was like at the Sony scoring stage, orchestrating on these projects, and it was terrifying, like just utterly just terrible, but I learned so much and like loved every minute of it. And then that turned into like, okay, we'll give you a composer's assistant job. So my job at that point was sit on the couch behind one of the composers all day, every day, learn how he works. And then when he'd get called out for something, and I'd go clean up his sessions, or he would be done for the day and I would stem everything out, or I'd read. He was sort of like a mad scientist. So like if you were to just watch him work, everything went at 100 miles per hour. And my brain the whole time is just trying to figure out how I'm going to organize the session again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same with like edit sessions where you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at after like 2 hours of work. So that was my job, was just kind of be there, be on call, learn the craft. Eventually, maybe, we'll give you a shot at writing. But right now your job is to sit and learn. And like when we need somebody to print stems for an emergency on a film or a trailer, you're the guy, and it doesn't matter what time of day it is or anything like that. So learned a lot.
Nice. For the people
at
question
home, go ahead, DG. I think you're gonna ask the same thing.
What are stems? For the people
Sorry, I'm blowing right past that.
No, you're good.
Basically like individual sections of the recording. So you would have a drum stem or a brass stem or a vocal stem or piano, like all the different things that especially editors just kind of want access to, and especially trailers, because you may give them a fully orchestrated piece of music and they may just actually want synth pads and brass and drums. You know what I mean? So, and we give them that ability and that flexibility in the audio file delivery that they can sort of make it whatever they need it to be. Yeah.
What is the process, for those who don't know, of cleaning up you said when he was done or he got called out, you would go on and you would clean up the session. What does that mean?
I mean, it was literally just like renaming things. Like there would be 50 tracks called MIDI 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I would go and, okay, this MIDI 1 is actually a synthesizer. This MIDI 1 is actually a French horn.
Nice.
And I do the exact same thing now. It is like, it's all audio 1 until I'm done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a template. I do my best, but yeah, I make a mess just like everybody else.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, it was very like nuts and bolts. If I knew something was going to go to orchestra, I would, adjust his, like, because you're live performing. If you're a piano player, you're usually live performing into your computer. Some people will go and let the computer automatically like snap everything to the grid, and some won't. And so if I knew with him, if he was going to be just freestyling and then we were going to go to orchestra, I better get that thing on the grid as soon as he's done, because this might be my only chance. Because it's gonna be swimming all over the place otherwise.
Yeah.
And if you're a French horn player and you see, if I was to print the sheet music from what he played, everything would be early or late and very confusing. It would sound right in the audio file, but just the way computer programming works, it wouldn't translate to sheet music. So it's a very boring job, but I loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's great that you loved it, because I think that's sort of like a mark of that you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
You enjoy the boring parts of it. You're like, oh wow, because you're learning. And I think that's a big element of it.
Totally. So you can't get enough. It's like you're on YouTube and you're looking up like, hey, I found this new key command. That's like what you're doing in your off time, which is stupid, but that's what it is.
Yeah. So after you were at that job, what was the next step for you?
So I stayed there for a while because they started letting me write.
Nice.
Yeah, I maybe a year or so into it, I landed my first trailer with a composition I had done, which was there was a Will Smith movie in like 2015 called Concussion. And so I did a trailer for that one. It was nice. This piece I had written, and we went and recorded the orchestra in Nashville. The piece wasn't written for the trailer; they just licensed it. So that was really cool. Like, got on a plane, went to the orchestra there, heard them play my cue live. It was only like the second time or so professionally I'd heard a piece of my music be played by an orchestra. Awesome. It's just like there's literally nothing like it. Like just the power of like being in the room and just hearing it. There's a reason that the movies always seem to swing back to the orchestra, because it just like, it feels so special when you're like in the midst of it. So we had recorded that. And then, so I got the trailer for Concussion. All I had been told is, you got a trailer for the movie Concussion. And I went, great. So the trailer, right? I didn't realize there's 3 regular trailers, 15 TV spots, 3 international trailers. So I was like scouring the internet being like, they lied to me. Like, this is I can't find it anywhere. And then eventually one day I found it. It was an international trailer, Sony Pictures India, which is what the YouTube link that I found. And so that was the first thing. So I got to start writing for them on the trailer side, on the film side, which they're doing more trailers than films. But and then eventually, like, I got pretty high up there. I ended up becoming the head of production for the company. And so, it was awesome. It was a ride for sure. But I went from like couch time to being able to build out my own studio and write freely and work on a lot of really cool, interesting things.
That's really awesome. And so after that, you said you built out your studio, and then you've been doing, because I know you have, at least you've done a couple features.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one, I had been working with a music supervisor who's a dear friend of mine. I actually talked to her on the phone this afternoon. And she was in the middle of this project and she couldn't say much about it, but she's like, hey, are you available right now? And I was like, well, of course, whatever. I'm looking for work always. And it ended up being, it's this little documentary that was through HBO, and it was produced by the Duplass Brothers. called Last Stop Larrimah. And I basically got the call because they were using a bunch of temp music from the White Lotus, and they're like, we know you love him, so can you like do your version of that? And I was like, yeah, that sounds freaking awesome. Yeah, it was originally like, of course, then you get on the gig and everything changes. You ended up having one cue that sounds like the White Lotus vaguely, and then everything's different after that. But so that one I did with a friend of mine, Randon Purcell. I don't think we're technically the credited composers on that. We're credited as original compositions. And I think it's because they used a good amount of library music as well with that. But that was the first, we got on a plane, went to South by Southwest to see the premiere, hung out with the director and the crew, and then saw it on HBO. And we got really lucky because it was only ever supposed to be, well, you'll see why I'm laughing. It was only ever supposed to be a Max, like an HBO Max release. But then because it was either the pandemic or the writer's strike, my years are messed up, but there was nothing for them to air. So they just started airing it on mainline HBO. And so that's a big change from HBO Max documentary to being aired on HBO. And then they ended up signing international rights with Netflix. So I've got a picture on my phone of it being #1 in Australia for like a week. Nice. Because it took place in Australia, and it was like they sort of took it in as their version of Tiger King. Because it was like this very nice. Is this like very the premise of it? I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but the premise of the documentary was this tiny town in Australia, completely off the map. There's like 12 people who live there, and one person goes missing under suspicion of murder, and that's 3 hours later. You have Last Stop Larrimah. So that project like really lit a fire under me, because I had done student films, I had done like Hallmark style projects, but that was the first this feels very real. This feels like a step up, and it was just so exciting, man. Like I think of those days so fondly, and it's like it's so hard. Like the work is so difficult, and especially with documentary, because it's like documentary music goes everywhere. Like there's not like as much of a through line musically as there is through like a narrative feature. Documentaries, it's like, all right, 1 second we're here, and then the next second it's bluegrass, and then the next second it's like new metal. It's like, oh yeah, okay. So thankfully I had a friend working on that one with me, because otherwise I don't know if I would have been able to hang. But yeah, amazing learning experience. They were very patient with me, as like sort of this was my first like real rodeo. And luckily, I'd been on major Disney trailers and stuff like that. So I was aware of the pressure, and that was okay with me. It was just literally the volume was new, the amount of music you have to write for a 3-hour documentary. You know what I mean? And I remember doing that, just going like, how do TV composers do this? This is crazy. Like, the idea that like, oh, new season of Wednesday, and there's going to be 10 episodes, which is 10 hours of music. You know what I mean? It's marvel at it, because I'm a fast writer. I'm like one of the fast ones. So I can't even imagine what psychotic pace these people are on. So no, Last Stop Larrimah, I love that. I love that film.
I was looking at your I have Apple Music. Controversial. I feel like a lot of people have Spotify, but I was looking at
Apple
your
Music.
You are?
Yeah. I'm actually
Music Brothers.
I'm bullying my friends right now to get off of Spotify and to join Apple Music.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I was looking at some of your, and I know that you have the Green and Gold movie that you composed for.
Yeah.
And I just saw how many tracks there were, and I was like, that is a lot of tracks.
Yeah,
I'm just imagining.
Yeah, and that's what makes the final soundtrack. So there's a lot that are cut, and that was a short movie. That was a good old fashioned 90-minute movie.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's crazy just the amount of music they have to write. And now like once you sort of get used to that rhythm, that it becomes fun.
Yeah,
but at first it's very much like just drinking out of a fire hose, man. But yeah, man, Green and Gold. That's like that movie holds such a special place in my heart. I will be grateful for that film till the day I die.
So what was the process for that like? Because I remember before you saying, not here but another place, that you knew the directors that you worked with. So how did you get onto Green and Gold?
So, okay, so this is a funny one. So Green and Gold, the premise of Green and Gold, no, I'm sure people listening haven't seen it, so I'll pitch it really quick. It's a granddaughter played by this lovely young woman named Madison Lawler. She's like on the up right now. She's amazing. And then the grandfather played by Craig T. Nelson, who's Coach and the voice of Mr. Incredible and you know, a legend. And so that's grandpa and granddaughter. They are up in Wisconsin. They are diehard Green Bay Packers fans, and they also own a family farm. And that family farm is falling on hard times. And so a series of events happens that leads them to literally betting the farm on the Green Bay Packers. So, and it's just like the sweetest, most like earnest, sincere project, and it was so fun. So the filmmakers, so the director is a lovely man named Anders Lindwall, and his little brother I met first on that same hall that I'm talking about, where I like my friend told me to do film music, and this guy's like, my dad works for Hans Zimmer.
Hilarious.
All I knew about him was he was a diehard Packers fan. That's like, we didn't hang out that much. Like we would see each other at events and stuff like that. And I knew he was like vaguely interested in filmmaking. But so we went through all of college without ever like working on a project together. It wasn't like I was doing his films or anything like that. Then a couple years into us each working professionally, they were doing a lot of commercials. So he's like, hey, his brother is the director and Davin, his younger brother, is a producer on the film. And that was the relationship on all these commercials they were doing. And they were doing I think a NASCAR ad, and they weren't happy with whatever was happening with the music. So Davin was like, oh yeah, there was a kid I went to college with who is like into film scoring. Let's call him and like give him a shot. So I took the call and I was like, yeah, of course. That sounds super fun. I either did it for like $500 or for free. I don't remember. It was like one of those like situations. Yeah. And yeah, we hit it off. So that was probably like 2016, maybe earlier. So it was quite a while, maybe almost a decade before a feature was part of that. But I ended up just doing tons of commercials with them over the years because that's how they were paying their bills. They were doing like, we did this like little mini documentary for Otterbox. We were doing like Monster ads, like stuff like that. And it was great fun. Like they just have the kindest spirits and like true like Upper Peninsula, like Wisconsin. They're from the top of Michigan, but it's the same sort of culture, but just really sweet, big-hearted guys. And they just kept teasing like, hey man, one day we're going to make a movie and like, we're going to call you on it. And I was like, sounds good, guys. Let's keep making commercials so I can keep paying the bills. One day they were like, hey, we're going to send you a script. And I read the scripts and loved it. And I was like, whatever I need to do here, please, like, I'd love to be a part of this. And originally they had just brought me on to write songs for the film. It wasn't necessarily that I was like, it wasn't like, oh, we knew this guy, we've done commercials, therefore he gets the gig. You know, I think that's, if it was just them making it, maybe that would have happened, but there are producers and real money involved and like investors, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I got the script and then I wrote some songs for it with my wife, who also worked on the film. And then next thing I knew, they were on set filming to one of the songs I've written. So I'm like, okay, I got it. And a lot of songs, they don't cut that scene. I'm at least on the movie. And I had a feeling that I would probably get an audition or something for the score. So eventually that came, and it takes a while. Like between script and filming and post-production, it's a game of patience for sure. It takes a long time, and you got to be ready when the time comes. So of course, you know, you don't hear anything for months at a time, and then it's like, hey, can you turn around this scene in 48 hours as your audition? You know what I mean? Because it's like that's what it is. You know, that's the gig. Is like. And so I was like, yeah, of course, canceled everything, panicked, and then got straight to writing. And what's so funny is I looking back, because even though I had read the script, it's so different when you're, number one, in a state of panic, and number two, like auditioning for something and seeing it for the first time. I didn't like totally have context for what the scene was. So I'm certain that I scored it completely wrong. But I just got a note from the director. He just said, "Hey man, just so you know, like the piece that you wrote like genuinely made me feel something." And I couldn't say that for some of the other pieces that came in, because they had multiple composers auditioning for it. So it was pretty much like, okay, I had already written songs, so I'm happy. Like if I get it, that would be amazing. But like I'm just happy to be a part of it. And then the call came a couple months later. And then it was freaking go time, man. That was that was the craziest turnaround. The amount of stress that I put on my own body getting that one in, and I know that the amount of stress that I was feeling during that time was just a microcosm of what the director was feeling and the producer. And you're dealing with it for this finite amount of time, a couple months or whatever you've got to write the music. We had less than that, but they're dealing with it for like 3, 4, 5 years. Just like operating on this insane level of like, you're making 100 decisions every day that affect the outcome of a feature film. So it was crazy. But luckily Anders and I had worked together for almost a decade at that point. And so we had a lot of shared language, and I had done he made a short film that I had done that he wasn't happy with, so he never showed anyone, but we worked well together. And so we had a pretty good shared, and if we didn't have that like built-in rapport from knowing each other before, it could have been a complete disaster, just because the turnaround times were absolutely insane. And that was just the reality of that project.
That's a great example of, because you said you don't even remember if you got paid on that first project you worked with him on, right? Of like something like that turning into then regular work on commercial work to then now like something really big or bigger. Which is really cool, because there's a lot of like people that I've worked with since college, friends, worked on a ton of projects free together or crappy pay or whatever, and it's just turned into, one day we're gonna do that feature film. And that's always the conversation from set to set to set, that one day that this will change, which is, I think, is so cool.
Honestly, that's why I still do them. Like I still do freebies. I still do really low paying, if I believe in the filmmaker or the art or whatever it is, because I do a lot of like pop music production as well, and I feel the same way about that. If I believe in the artist, I'll do it, man. Like, because number one, we do this because we love doing it. We want to make the art. But number two, it's like you can never underestimate somebody with a good idea and with that like can-do attitude and like the ambition to get things done. When you see that in a person, that's everything. Just run with that.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be all right.
That was what I was going to bring up there, was like, I was like, we love, like, true hardcore filmmakers love just doing it. So as long as it doesn't hurt the bank account too much, and you can you give up a few days here and there, like it's not, ultimately the hope is that will pay off in the future. And it's experience, and this industry is so huge on like the experiences you gain to then make you better, to then get you to that big project. And that's so important. I cannot emphasize that enough to people. It's like, just go and film, just do it. Whether it's post, pre, or actual production, like just do it, it's crazy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Saturation.io. Saturation is a modern, cloud-based budgeting and expense management platform built specifically for filmmakers, producers, and production teams. Designed by industry professionals, it helps streamline financial workflows for films, TV shows, commercials, and so much more. With real-time collaboration features, customizable budget templates, and automated expense tracking, Saturation eliminates the need for clunky spreadsheets and outdated software. It supports seamless imports from tools like Movie Magic and offers powerful insights and control controls without that learning curve. So, whether you're managing a small indie film or a multi-million-dollar production, Saturation gives you clarity, accuracy, and control all in one place. With a free tier available and proven for use by producers across all budgets, there has never been a better time to experience the next generation of production finance. Click the link in the description to get started today. All right, let's get back to the show.
Something that I wanted to ask you about was getting away a bit from your backstory and stuff. What is the process of like, okay, you're given a script, whether it's a friend or not, you're given a script, Chris wants to convince you to compose for me. Mm-hmm. What would that process look like to convince a composer to get onto your project, like for you? And then how important is that director to composer relationship?
Oh, man, it's so vital, because like these really are the people you're in the trenches with. Like I said, my wife Natalie worked on the Green and Gold as well. She was throughout the whole score, but she was also the singing voice of the main character.
Oh wow. So
even with that in the mix, I still talked to the director more than my wife during that period of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, no, totally.
You are fully together. So I think the biggest thing is like the first couple of times you meet or just hang out, like having some rapport. And I think there's like a natural human, like you feel the connection. And if you guys are getting excited about the same things and you're like, oh man, like this film, this score, like this album, that's just like, that's such good, like shared DNA, and you can like see the light in the other person's eyes. I think that's huge. Like, and I have been on projects where you didn't have that, and it's a struggle. You could still work together, but it's for like truly, if you want to make meaningful art, I think that connection has to be there at some level. Not that you can't make meaningful art the other way, but it's just, it feels better and it's more of an enjoyable process, and you feel like you're on the same page. You're not fighting against each other in any way, even when you might have a disagreement about, oh, I think the music actually should come in 12 seconds earlier there and kind of set up that scene. You're saying, no, I think it should be a hard in. You will still have it's not like you're going to agree on everything.
Yeah, right.
But having that shared respect. So I love when a director wants to just send me any materials that inspired them. Like, for example, on Green and Gold, he was sending me Wendell Berry poems. And he's like, check this out, man. Like, this is what gets me going on this project. And I was like, I'll meet you there. You know what I mean? Next thing I know, I'm reading Wendell Berry, just trying to like get in his headspace and listen to the music he's listening to. And I think that's great, especially if like you have those connections outside of this specific project and like bringing that excitement into it in some weird roundabout way is huge. I mean, there's a reason why directors tend to stick with their composers, which can sometimes be very frustrating when you're a composer and you want to work with the director. You got to respect it. You know what I mean? It's like, I've accepted that Wes Anderson is not calling. I have accepted this. I can't compete with Alexander Desplat, but that's okay. I'm not his guy. And this is going to be that way.
Until he's booked on another project.
That's right.
He's looking
then
for
you call
another
US.
composer. Yeah, that happens with big directors all the time.
You'll find a director that nobody can get that director except for you.
Yeah, and that happens. Directors are weirdos. They're psychos. Like, I say that in the most loving way possible. But like, to have the idea that like, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 5 years of my life going down the most insane, financially risky rabbit hole you could possibly imagine, and I'm just gonna like feel fine about it as much as I can. Like there's a screw loose. I think that's fair to say, 100%. And I think it's great. I think it's awesome. You know what I mean? So there are certain quirks, and I've certainly got some quirks myself that I'm sure can either appeal to a director or scare the living hell out of them.
I mean, I personally, I feel like, when I look back at some of the movies that really have inspired me, a lot of times, like, it is in connection with the music that comes with it. I mean, there are going to be movies like No Country for Old Men, which is a great movie.
Yeah.
No score. Yeah. But I would say it's almost, that never happens really.
Yeah. Portrait of a Girl on Fire, my favorite movie in the last 10 years is or Lady on Fire, I think it's called. No score.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it hurt me at some level, but I was like, I get
it. Yeah. It's and like a lot of the movies that I really like, or I mean, I think sometimes too that the score I'll listen to outside of the movie, just on repeat like 100 times, and then like it just makes the movie better, even though the movie's not as good as I feel like the score is.
Yeah, sometimes happens. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to go back a little bit because when you were first starting out, you mentioned that you had got a publisher, and that was pretty important in getting work.
Yeah. Basically, so when I was working for those guys, they were my publisher. So they had a publishing company, and so everything that I wrote, they had the publishing rights on it automatically, and which is great if you're nobody, because then you have somebody standing in between Disney and you making music out of your garage. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I when I was in my like early to mid 20s, I was doing Star Wars trailers. Like, if they would have ever seen me in person, they never would have given me that gig. Like, not a chance. Like, there's no way. But they went to a music publisher and said, hey, they literally said, it was right when Rogue One was happening. And they said, we're going to need so much music for this. So get your guys and gals together and write us as many like trailer pieces of all these different Star Wars themes. So we did that, and luckily some of mine got picked in that. And then once they like it, then you go in with them and work on it together with the cut. But yeah, if I was just some like random, I mean, I am some random guy, but if I didn't have a music publisher standing and getting that brief in from Disney, I'd never ever would have made it to my inbox. So they serve a very vital role, and specifically like the music licensing world, because even if you are custom scoring something, for the most part, it's different on films and TV for the score itself, but for the advertising part of it, so trailers, promos, bumpers, all of that, they're going to go through a music publisher almost always. Even if they are going directly to a composer, chances are they probably also have their own music publishing entity. Because it's just like, yeah, if you open that up to anyone, like, hey, internet, we want Star Wars music, you'll drown. Like they're drowning already. You know what I mean? And so you really do. You need a music publisher to take a risk on you first. And then once that relationship is established, then you sort of you don't get the keys to the kingdom, but you get access to things you would never have access to, and you pay a price. They take a cut, and it's all very above board and normal. But yeah, that's how you do it. But I mean, to this day, there has been like a very, very small handful of times that a trailer or something like that has just come directly to me. Now it's a little bit more common nowadays, but yeah, especially when you're starting out, yeah, nobody knows who you are.
I was going to ask about the differences between when you first started and now, and how, if let's say a person were coming into this and wanting to get a publisher on board, get on board with a publishing company, like how would they do it, and would it be a little bit different of a process than how it happened for you?
I want to add to that, because this is what I was going to ask. It's extremely similar. We've gotten the story of like where you were, but where are you now? Are you still with a publisher? Are you just yourself? Do you have your own? Yeah. Touch on that so that it can lead into the
Okay, yeah. So nowadays I'm signed with Warner Chappell Music. They're my publishing entity, and so yeah, everything that I write, scores are interesting. Sometimes they're buyouts. Sometimes it's a whole business entity. But if I'm ever writing like songs, or I'm writing pieces of music to be pitched for trailers, or I'm writing for advertising, everything goes through Warner Chappell. They're my front door into that world for the most part. There are exceptions, of course, but yeah, so I'm with them now, and I love them. So when I first started, I think it was a little bit different of an ecosystem in that the technology was a lot jankier. So there were a lot more weird jobs to be had. You know what I mean? Like, for example, when I was talking about stems, nowadays, if I'm working on a track, the second I'm done writing it, I can put 10 elements into a group track and immediately export it. That was a job when I started, like to literally record in real time every single file beginning to end so that they were the same length so that the editor didn't get confused. That was a whole job. And as technology's gotten better and things break less, you know, like I always talk about when I first started, like was working on like 5 or 6 computers. You would have the main computer and then you'd have a bunch of server computers, and it would be, oh, there's your string box and there's your brass box and then there's your choir box. And it's because there wasn't a computer strong enough to hold all of these libraries and fire them off at the same time without lighting itself on fire, basically. Like it didn't exist. So there was an entire job of like maintaining composer studios. And because a lot of, you know, and I'm not that old. This wasn't that long ago. Like this was 10 years ago. But there was a lot of composers that came up through what I lovingly refer to as the pencil and paper era, which is they are writing music to be recorded. There was an entire job of, okay, put this music and make a computer work. And like that, those composers, either they're still around and they have their set teams to do that, or they've just adapted and now they write into the computer because it saves so much more time and they understand how it works. Most of the time you would be working with a composer who didn't really understand computers. So you were the young guy who knew how to restart a Mac when things went wrong. So a lot of those jobs that I kind of cut my teeth on, they're gone, which sucks because, you know, I would love to be like, oh, there's a million things you can do. It's getting less. It is getting less. So now the onus is much more on the young creatives to kind of get good on their own time and their own dime. You know, I was getting paid to be in people's studios and fix stuff. And then when they would go out for coffee or they go out for lunch, I would sit in their room and write, you know, and that's how I learned. So that path's not gone by any means. There are still, especially when you get to like TV, where there are usually a team of composers if it's a big enough show and the budget's high enough that everybody needs a guy or a gal and to just kind of like be their other brain, some sort of assistant role. Those are still everywhere. But my specific path of kind of this like utility guy who knows computers and sort of knows the orchestra and has some good ideas sometimes, probably not as vital now. Like it's much more like, oh, your demo sounds as good as mine. I'm going to hire you and bring you into my room for when like this goes wrong and I need somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just different. It's different now. Yeah. And it's also a lot easier to make really good sounding music. Like there are sample libraries that are free now that I would have like given all of the money I had ever saved to get in 2010. Like literally, yeah. I worked a college job, and every dime other than like the noodles I would get across the street and stretch out to 3 meals, everything went to sample libraries, you know? And it's like, now that technology is insane. Like it sounds really good. I will always be a real orchestra truther. There's nothing like the real orchestra, but boy, you can get pretty close with really, really like non-computer hungry, like processing power libraries now, which was not the case. So if you're good with a computer, you got good ideas, you can get a really good sounding idea a lot faster than I could when I was 20, for sure.
In so many ways, this industry across the board, I mean, yeah, this industry specifically across the board has gotten so much easier to get into, but also so much harder to get into because of this. You know, I think about that literally all the time as crews get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah,
it's same-ish type of vibe of what you're talking about, because lighting teams keep getting smaller, so then it's harder to learn lighting, which is so important for film. To jump off that, and maybe we don't need to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but like in terms of artificial intelligence, how do you feel you know, we've had lots of conversations about how it's affecting the industry and where it might be going. I think the general consensus is it should be used as a tool to better what we're doing and take out some of the monotonous work. But in terms of composing, what are the fears? Where do you think it's going to land, and how, because you're going to have to eventually, are you going to utilize it in your workflow?
Yeah.
Do you like the Velvet Sundown?
I'm not a personal fan of the Velvet Sundown. Yeah, it's not something that I am super comfortable with. Just the concept in general of how it's infiltrating the arts. I hate the idea that the fact that creative voices are going to lose their jobs is inevitable. I push back against that, and I've had meetings with music executives that are like, oh yeah, those days are long gone already. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I am certain that there are things that I do right now that it's going to replace just for financial purposes on the other side of things. There are certain types of TV that use my back catalog a lot that would probably love to not pay for that if they don't have to, especially when its entire job is to just fill the space between, housewives yelling at each other, which is no shade. Love the housewives. But that kind of stuff, I see an end date. I see an expiration date in that, just kind of on a practical level. As much as I would love them to keep using a hip hop beat that I wrote 20, not 20. I'm not that old, am I? No, like 10 years ago. I would love them to keep using that because that keeps showing up on my royalty statements, but I do think there are certain creative outputs that are probably going to go away, and that sucks. I'm not a fan of that at all because there's a whole ecosystem of composers that are middle class, and myself included in that have made a great life in sort of those pockets, and they have families and they love what they do and they're really good at what they do. And just because they didn't go and start winning Oscars for the biggest movies of all time, they are very respectable composers, and I hate that that's threatened by the technology. I am an optimist in that when I talk to creatives, everyone seems to be on the same page that it's like, no, but when you want to make something, like you're gonna go get the person who is gonna make that with you. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be sad if and when it happens, but I haven't talked to a director that I've run into a party. He's like, oh yeah, I'm throwing my composer, my editor, my music supervisor, they're all gone. Like, we don't need them at all. No one's ever said that to me. They're just like, hey, let's tell human stories. And I know that that's kind of like I feel like that's like the line we're all supposed to use right now is like, yes, but you can't replace human creativity. But I also feel like that's true. You know what I mean? And AI can't tell the stories that flawed people can tell. And I think that that's like what is the magic. And so I'm not worried about that going away at the moment, at least. But I have had to use certain AI technologies as a tool, and those things I'm okay with. Stem splitting. I'll be working on a trailer or an ad, and they want to use a song from 1950. And I'm going, honey, well, if you want the isolated vocals, those have been lost for half a century. But AI technology can say, okay, here's your Elvis Presley vocal separate from his band. There you go. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. Now we get to make cool, interesting art off of that. And as long as, the person who owns the master is properly compensated, which they always are more than properly compensated for those things, then we're good. So tools like that they make the impossible possible. Great. I have no issue with that. I only take issue with sort of like the cynical bottom line at all costs driven ideology behind certain factions of the AI community. But I'm not I'm not participating too much in that world, if I'm honest.
It's the classic tech industry coming in and then starting to get concerned about the bottom line, because finance, especially in film, because it is a business, is important. But what makes great movies great is the collaboration. You take that away because an artificial intelligence is creating it, there's nothing. you can no longer like relate to it, because the stories and what we bring to these films and these projects comes from our own experiences in life, as well as on other projects that then we bring into it. And I feel like that is a key thing that makes film sell or makes film good, or like, so like everyone talks about, you talk about the classics and stuff, is because of that. So if you take that away, it's just going to turn into more doom scrolling, right? It's just designed to hack our brains so we never look away, which is not the point of filmmaking.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Obviously you want to on some level get people interested to continue to watch it, but it's the emotional aspect, not the I'm just going to use your psyche to keep you watching type.
Totally. And it's like, I see it in the music industry as well. It's just like anybody can make music that sounds great now. There are tools that you can make somebody their first day ever with a laptop and a recording software, if they get a Splice subscription, they can make a song that sort of sounds like Sabrina Carpenter. It won't be as good by any means, but they can get a certain sonic quality very quickly. But that's not what audiences react to. That's just how I feel. It's like, okay, you can sort of sound like Sabrina Carpenter, but you don't have the skill set to make me feel the way that Sabrina Carpenter makes me feel. You know what I mean? There's like that expertise and that human touch. It's not just a sonic, oh, this sounds like pop music. This has caused an emotional reaction in me because of that person's humanity. It's a completely different threshold that you have to cross. And like I have written 1,000 songs that sound great and have done absolutely nothing because they're not as good as Sabrina Carpenter. You know what I mean? Like it's that simple. And yeah, there's always going to be that like, so yeah, maybe AI is going to get to all of my bad songs. It's definitely going to get to that level very comfortably, very quickly. But yeah, if you want to make something great and lasting, you still got to do it the old fashioned way.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was, there's like this, like anytime there's like a really influential movie that happens, like the next year or in the next couple years, there's like a lot of copycats of it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of copycats of like either the form or the style, like when, found footage is like a great example of like they did that first, like, the Blair Witch, like, and then like years later, people are just like, they took the idea and like went wild with it. And there's a lot of bad versions of it. After a while you get, people who are using it artistically and then they create good versions of it.
Totally.
But I think it's similar I think AI is probably going to be similar in a way because it can only be a derivative,
Yes.
It's harder for it to be, coming from another place, So
couldn't agree more.
I think yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
I was on a commercial shoot 2 weeks ago, and there was a guy who works in the music industry who I think he was connected to the client. And I was at the end of shooting, and I walked in on a conversation of him talking about, he asked us like, oh, how do we feel about like AI and like, what do we think is going to do to the industry? We all collectively were like, yeah, tools, it's going to be like make our jobs easier, not replace us, like blah, blah, blah. We talked about the ethics and all that stuff. But then I was like, well, what about you? You work in the, the music industry, like what's going on there? And he was like, same thing. He was like, ethically, I have this problem, but what's happening right now with the company he works for is before they would spend like $3,000 to get a songwriter to make a piece of music. They would send the money to him and be like, hey, make it. And then it would be like, I got to make changes, or, oh, you need to make this fix. And 3 months later, I needed the process or like whatever. And it just dragged down. Right. So they throw a ton of money at it. And then, the writer takes a year just to produce a single song. He's like, right now I can spend $300 and I can get 20 songs from an AI. And from the like corporate level, that just makes sense more financially and quicker. And then I was like, in my mind, I was like, but that's the slop. It's just, everything's just going to become slop at that point. Because like, I think there's a balancing act, right? Like a year, $3,000 plus whatever, how long it takes. That's too slow, right? But also at the same time, it's like maybe we wouldn't get those bops or those hits if that process didn't happen. So it's like if the AI is just kicking it out towards you.
Totally.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I listen to I'm a big fan of music, so I listen to a lot of, media surrounding music, and we spent the whole summer saying there's not a song of the summer, yet there's like 10, 20, 30,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every day. So it's like it wasn't an output problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I do think there were actually really good songs this year, though.
No,
for the record.
Definitely.
For sure there were.
Yeah.
For sure there were. I know we're getting closer to the end. I wanted to talk about some of the upcoming projects that you have. I know that you have a album that's releasing pretty soon.
Yeah.
Where you work with an orchestra, which I think is really cool. Do you mind talking about some of that and some of the other things you're doing?
Yeah. So it's actually a perfect segue, because sort of one of the onuses of that project was like, if I'm concerned at all that AI is going to come for some of the work that I do, I should probably spend the time to figure out what my voice is right now. Like really like dig in and struggle with it, and not just fill a brief or make a client happy, but what do I want to say right now while I have time, sort of, and kind of use it as like an exercise, but also like I wanted to stamp in like I'm here, if that makes sense. Like, so that's what this project was. And I think that initially the writing and the concept of the album started out maybe a little bit more cynical than I was hoping for. It was a lot of, I didn't know that I was going to go to orchestra, but my thought was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some tracks and bring in some collaborators and like get something out really quick. So that I've, number one, got like music under my name on streaming, and like I have some representation of me. And then as you get into the creative process, it's like, oh, this isn't gonna be easy. It's like, it's everything that you think is gonna be like, oh, I'll do that in my free time. Absolutely not. You know what I mean? So I started writing this project, and as I didn't know what I wanted to be. I had a couple of loops that I had made that were sort of electronic, and because of my background, there's always going to be some sort of orchestral element. But I was thinking, a string here and there, but for the most part, just whatever I wanted to write. And as I was writing it, it became more and more optimistic and like intrinsically hopeful, which like I came from punk rock music when I was a kid, and there was this idea of like, what's the most punk rock thing you can do right now? What's the rebellious thing? And like for me, it felt like hope. Like it felt rebellious to be like, maybe this is going to be okay. Maybe humans are going to be fine, and we're going to make it through this and be stronger for it. And that album sort of took on this whole meaning and identity for me, and that I just tried to inject as much humanity into it as possible. So as soon as you're doing that, you go, well, I've got a lot of fake strings going on. That's not right for what this feels like. And I was self-funding this bad boy. So I'm like really wrestling with how I'm going to do this. And I broke down and I went to orchestra, man. And
nice.
I'm so glad I did. They were it's this orchestra out in North Macedonia, and they go by Fame's Orchestra. But I'd written these pieces and I orchestrated them and sent them over. And the conductor was fantastic. He was British, so we spoke English. Then he would speak to the players there, and we had like 1 hour to record everything. So it's like it's like as fast as you can possibly go. You're getting like 2-3 takes at best. Luckily, the players are amazing. So the project is, like I said, it's like an orchestral electronic crossover sound. And I've got one track out, but the rest of it comes out October 7th. And it's something I just wanted to write, something that I thought was beautiful, that like resonated with me and represented me as an artist. And like I said, after a decade of working for other people, which I've loved every second of it, it's not about you. It's not about what you want to say as an artist or what you want to put out into the world. It's a collaboration, or it's the director's vision, like more often than not. So this was like, okay, we're going to spend time and find out what I sound like. Yeah, it was super, super special to me. There's, I called it a lot of funny names throughout the process. Some of those stuck. Like for the final title is Almost Everything Means Nothing, which I enjoy because it sounds cynical at first, and then you sort of think about it. It's like one that you sort of chew on in the shower, and you're like, okay, but if almost everything, then some things might mean a great deal. Is that sort of what he's trying? It felt like a pretentious thing you would see on an art gallery. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's sick. But I called for like 6 months. It was called Chili's Triple Dipper. Like that's literally what it was called. And I was like, we're gonna go with that.
Yeah.
But no, I talked myself off the ledge on that one. But there's still there's a track on it that's one of my favorite tracks apart. It's like a very like floaty violins, cool track, but I called it Butter Sage Sauce / Yelling at the Birds. And that is because I cook a lot at home, and my wife is in a long-term fight with the birds in our backyard that has gone on years, like this blood feud. So I was literally cooking dinner and like listening to whatever, and then I just hear my wife yelling at birds outside like they're going to listen to her. And I was just like, what an amazing vignette of what our lives look like. Yeah. And I'm going to put that in because that felt real, and she didn't believe me, and I called it that. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know we're getting close to the very end here. Before we go though, do you mind telling everybody where they can find you?
Oh yeah, sure.
Home address.
Yeah. So if you go to, never mind. Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is just CoreyMartinmusic.com. Corey, Corey. And then I'm very, very active on TikTok, more than I'd like to be, but hey, it helps. So TikTok is Corey Martin Composer, and same with Instagram is Corey Martin Composer. TikTok is more just like silly stuff with me around the studio and teasing stuff I'm working on, whereas Instagram is like, here's the big fancy ad that I did. So if you want to goof around, go to TikTok. But other than that, you can hear my music on streaming platforms and all those places. And I try to stay really consistent with putting out music. I have a really hard time stopping.
That's great.
I
just keep going, and I just keep writing, even when people don't need me to.
Love it.
That's perfect. Yeah. All right, Chris, your final question.
All right, Corey, if you had one piece of advice you'd give a young composer, short, sweet, simple, what would that be?
Connect with the emotion first before anything else when you're writing. As in, like, at some point, it doesn't matter if it sounds good or not, or if mostly it doesn't matter if it's technically right. If it makes you feel something, it's right. And lean into that feeling of something. And if some music professor comes along and says, you can't voice that way, that's wrong, they're wrong. If you make something that stirs up a piece of emotion and it's technically wrong on every level, stick with that feeling, because that's what's going to make you special, and that's what makes you connect with people who aren't analyzing your harmony, stuff like that. And I think that probably goes for all types of art. It's like the whole point is to push the boundaries and do something new. Sometimes even if it's amateurish, that's a plus. And if it makes you feel something, so much of my favorite music doesn't sound that good. It doesn't. But something about the vocal performance or the violin or the way the guy played the clarinet solo, it just stirs something in me, and I can't explain it. And I'm really glad that they leaned into that instead of going, we should probably get a really expensive mixing engineer to fix my snare drum, because people don't care.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Amazing.
Well, thanks.
I was not short. Sorry.
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
It was good. Really good. Thanks so much, Corey, for coming on the show today and sharing your journey, your story with us. Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thanks, so guys.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see
Bye.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye. And that's a wrap for today's Lot 1 podcast episode. Thank you so much to our guest, Corey Martin. If you enjoy this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Huge thanks to our producer, Mina Vazarian. You are a gentlewoman and a true patriot. And shout out to today's sponsor, Saturation.io, who makes budgeting a lot easier. Make sure to check us out on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot 1 Podcast. That is THELOT1PODCAST. And also check us out on lot1productions.com to see all the fun stuff we got going on. The film lingo of the day is
Stinger.
Stingers. These are very long, or it could be not too long, but electrical cords, where you plug in for one side, but they have a higher voltage.
They are just an extension cord. It's just a fancy word for an extension cord. But also, you want to know why they call them stingers, Deji? They're called stingers because you trip on them and you go, I hurt myself when you trip and you fall. That's why it's called a stinger, because you can sting yourself by tripping on the cable. Yep.
Well, you learned something new today, didn't you?
Yep.
All right.
Bye. Have you know that's what Dean Cundy taught me, so you're wrong.
That you trip on them? That's why they call it stingers?
Yep. And that it's basically just a fancy word for an extension cord. Doesn't matter the voltage. They're called a stinger.
Well, I talked to an electrician and I said, I'm going to get a stinger. And it was just an extension cord. And they said, that is not a stinger.
I've never had that happen to me. And I work in G&E all the time.
Different sets.
Wrong people on your sets.
Okay. Are we still recording?
Yes.